Well, hey everybody, we're in our third and final week of a series we've been calling Elevate Your Circle. We've been focusing on the idea of the circle of friends you surround yourself with. When we've been functioning off of this verse that says, walk with the wise and become wise, for a companion of fools suffers harm. And we mean that. When you walk with the wise, you will become wise. Pastor Rory and Pastor Allen were talking about when you surround yourself with good, wise, Jesus-following friends, you will go far. But now we're going to look at the latter half of that verse. A companion of fools suffers harm. Because you know by now that the people you surround yourself with is important. You know for the last few weeks, like, man, I should be surrounding myself with good people. But chances are you're in a situation where you're probably friends with someone you shouldn't be friends with. And if you're not, you probably will be. And that can happen for a number of ways. Maybe you've been friends with someone that you've known from the start. You're like, man, I really shouldn't be with this person for whatever reason, but they're cool, they're fun to hang out with, for whatever reason. Maybe you were friends with someone who was really cool when you first met them. They were a really good person, but over time they just kind of changed. And that happens, and now you're realizing, whoa, this person I'm with, they weren't who they were when I first met them. Maybe you've made a friend who you thought was really cool, you thought was really on the level, but then you found stuff out about them that realized, I shouldn't be friends with this person. I had that happen to me once. I met a guy in school who was the coolest guy ever. He was everything that I wanted to be. He was tall, he was buff, he was super handsome, he was getting his PhD, he was everything I wanted to be. And most importantly, he sought me out. He wanted to be my friend. I was enraptured with this guy. I started hanging out with him all the time. And if you know me, I brought him to my Dungeons and Dragons group. That's how you know it's serious. If you come and play D&D with me, that's a big deal. But then I found out after talking to some friends that they had realized that they had been pretty hurt by this guy. He had done some pretty toxic things to them that even though I wasn't the recipient of, I realized, oh man, this is not a person I want to be around anymore. If I continue to surround myself with this person, I will suffer harm. And so maybe you're in that tension where you're realizing, yeah, I'm in a circle that I shouldn't be with. What do we do when we're in that situation? The good news is this is a problem that's lasted a long time. I know it sounds weird saying that that's good news, but it means that we have a tradition of other people addressing this problem. And one such person is this guy named Paul. I think that's a pretty good name. Paul's writing to this church that's really dealing with this problem. They're surrounding themselves with people that they don't really know or trust, and Paul needs to address it. Paul says, do not be misled. Bad company corrupts good character. So this problem has been happening for a long time, thousands of years. I would say as soon as the concept of friends happened, people started to realize who are good friends and who are bad friends. So what do you do if you're in a situation where you're friends with someone or a group of people that you know, I need to not be around? Before we address that conversation, I want to say two things. One, we're not in the business of creating in-groups and out-groups. This conversation is not going to be me saying, all of your Christian friends you need to be around, and if your friends aren't Christian, you got to forsake them. That's exclusive, exclusionary, and that's not the business of what we're about here. We're not creating groups of people who are in and who are out, because to be honest, maybe there are some people who are Christian who you still don't need to be around. Maybe there are some people who aren't Christian that are still really beneficial to be around as well. We need to get out of the habit of creating these groups of people are good and these groups of people are bad. The second thing I want to address is that your friends are not projects. You shouldn't want to be around non-Christian people simply for the sake of converting them and getting them to Christianity. It doesn't feel great when you found out that someone's just been working on you and trying to get you to where you want them to be. Now, yes, the hope is that we love Jesus so much and that our friends would experience that love as well. But if you treat someone like a project, you're not treating them like a person. And that's really harmful. It can be for sure. So with those two things out of the way, how are ways that we can address this difficulty? The first is asking yourself, how do I find out if this is a person I want to be around? Because again, it's not as simple as they're this identity or they're that identity. We want to seek towards wisdom. And so with that, I have some questions that maybe you could ask yourself. One, is this person helping me look more like Jesus? Two, am I helping this person look more like Jesus? 3, do I find myself energized and excited when I'm around this person, or do I feel drained and tired? And 4, are there other people in my life who see this person the way I do? Now, I'm not saying you need to have all yeses or all nos. Those aren't the parameters for being a good friend, but they are some good benchmarks for wisdom and wise friends. So begin to ask yourself, this person or these people, do my friends think the same way about this person that I do? Because that's such a big indicator. Ask a trusted advisor, ask an adult, ask someone who you find to be really wise and responsible and say, hey, this friend is behaving this way towards me, but am I saying things the right way? That's a great step towards humility, is finding other people's perspectives. So let's say we've asked ourselves those questions and we're realizing, yeah, this is a friend that we should not have. This is a group of friends that I probably shouldn't associate myself with. We still need to find more nuance than just yes, these people and no, these people. Good wisdom is setting boundaries. If we can start thinking towards ideas of boundaries rather than yes, you or no, you, we could begin to truly elevate our circle. So, what are some boundaries that we can set for those friendships? This is a wisdom that we see in scripture as well. Jesus gives a good rhythm for healthy boundaries. In Matthew 18, he says, if your brother sins against you, go and show him his fault, just between the two of you. If he listens, you have won your brother over. If he will not listen, take one or two others along with you, so that every matter may be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. If he refuses to listen to them, tell it to the church. And if he refuses to listen even to the church, treat him as you would a pagan or tax collector. See, in that, Jesus establishes this rhythm. It's not just saying as soon as you think someone is guilty or wrong, cut them out. Jesus says, no, we should be providing space for peace and healthy boundaries. Now, I know the context of this is talking about church conflict, so it may not be the exact same, but the rhythm is the same. Take it step by step. Boundaries can be gradual. So what are some boundaries that we can establish so that our circle is the best it can be? Well, the first boundary to establish is the boundary of time. We see Jesus manage his time incredibly well. Jesus isn't out in the city, out with these people every single day. Jesus takes time to be by himself. Jesus takes time to be with his close friends. And yes, Jesus takes time to sit with tax collectors and sinners as well. If we get into a habit of establishing boundaries with our time, saying to our friends, hey, I don't have all this time that I can hang out with you. Hey, I don't think it's healthy for me to spend this much time with you, but I can hang out with you a little bit. I can hang out with you from this time to this time. I'm not going to tell you exactly what your time boundaries are, but just know that not everyone owns all of your time. You have the ability to say, this is a boundary of my time, even if you don't want to. Even if you love hanging out with this friend for hours and hours, take a step back and realize maybe just a few hours with this person is a healthy amount. That's the intuition that you've got to follow and listen with your close friends and leaders. The next boundary is a boundary of intensity and intentionality. Now, this extends even to the dating scene as well. Setting boundaries to say, hey, what are the contexts in which we're hanging out? Are we hanging out in big groups of people, or are we hanging out one-on-one for a long amount of time? I'm sure that you can think of a lot of friendships and relationships that have been really damaged by the amount of intensity and intentionality. Setting a boundary to say, hey, I'd love to hang out with you in this context, but maybe just one-on-one, or maybe just for this amount of time together, maybe that's not the healthiest. And I'm not saying you have to directly say that to them. I don't know if they would even hear that the right way. That's for your call to make. But setting that boundary in yourself to say, we know this friend isn't a good influence. We know this friend isn't the best. And maybe I don't have to cut them out entirely, but maybe I can set some boundaries in the way that I hang out with them. And finally, one huge boundary that you have the ability to establish is saying, hey, I don't think it's best for us to hang out anymore. That's a difficult conversation to have. But our intuition has to tell us when this person isn't the right person to hang out with, and setting that boundary and saying, hey, maybe this isn't the person I should hang out with. Seek that conversation out. We actually see that happen in the Bible as well. I'd love to share this story with you. We actually see an argument between 2 early church founders, Paul and Barnabas. They traveled together for a long time, but they came to a disagreement about some people that they were taking on their mission. And it says that they had such a sharp disagreement that they parted company. They got into such a big disagreement that they said, hey, maybe it's better for both of us to just go our separate ways. You have the ability to look at your friends and look at the circle you're with and say, even though I love these people, even though they're fun to be around, they're not the healthiest group of people to associate myself with. But things that are hard to do are often the ones most worth doing. I hope that as you go throughout your conversations with your small group, with your leaders, with your close mentors and advisors, that you would be able to look at your friends honestly and earnestly and say, how can I best elevate my circle? Who are the people I should be hanging out with, and who are the people that I maybe need to let go or set some more boundaries in? Guys, my prayer for you is that you would be encouraged this week as you explore this conversation of boundaries. Thank you so much.